You're staring at the spec sheet of another three-phase power logger, wondering if you'll end up with a pricey paperweight or a tool that actually saves you time on the job. I get that hesitation. You've probably spent a few too many evenings watching YouTube reviews that sound great until the device lands back in the toolbox, gathering dust. The fear of dropping money on something that doesn't fit your workflow is real, especially when you're dealing with equipment that can run into the thousands. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the Fluke 1732/B and why it might be the quiet workhorse you need, or why it could be overkill. This is a three-phase AC power and energy logger that automatically captures voltage, current, real power, apparent power, power factor, and energy consumption, then stores those readings for later analysis. What makes it stand out from a generic handheld multimeter is the built-in logging capability. You can set it to sample every second, minute, or whatever interval matches your project, and it will keep a running history without you having to stare at the screen the whole time. In a typical industrial maintenance setting, that means you can walk away after clipping the leads, let the logger run for a shift, and then pull the data into Fluke Connect to see exactly where a motor was pulling extra amps or where a transformer was lagging on power factor. If you're the kind of electrician who spends half the day chasing down, why is this motor heating up? Then the 1732/B can shave hours off your diagnostic process. Imagine you're on a plant that runs three-phase machinery 24/7. You hook the logger onto the 3 lines, set a 10-second logging interval, and let it run through a full production cycle. When you get back to the office, you open Fluke Connect on your laptop or phone, and the software instantly plots voltage dips, current spikes, and power factor swings, letting you pinpoint the exact moment a fault occurred. That visual evidence is far more persuasive to a plant manager than a single snapshot reading, and it gives you a concrete basis for recommending corrective action. On the flip side, if you're a residential handyman who only needs to verify that a single-phase outlet is live, the 1732/B is probably more than you need. The device's safety ratings, 600 V CADIV and 1000 V CADI, are fantastic for high-energy environments, but that level of protection also translates into a higher price tag and a heavier, bulkier case compared to a basic clamp meter. For someone who only occasionally checks a breaker box, a simpler meter will do the job for a fraction of the cost and with less setup time. One of the clever bits about the 1732/B is that it can power itself directly from the circuit you're measuring. In practice, that means you don't have to lug a separate battery pack when you're already working on a live three-phase panel. The instrument draws just enough power to run its logging functions without draining the line. In my field tests, that feature saved me from having to juggle spare AA cells or worry about the logger dying midway through a long-duration test. However, the trade-off is that you're dependent on the measured circuit being stable enough to supply the instrument. So in a situation where the line is intermittently dead or you're testing a completely offline system, you'll still need an external power source. Another practical strength is the integration with Fluke Connect. The app isn't just a glorified data viewer. It lets you tag each logging session, add notes, and even export the CSV files for deeper analysis in Excel or a data logging platform. For a maintenance manager who needs to compile reports for compliance audits, that connectivity is a real-time saver. The downside: the app does have a learning curve, and you'll spend a few minutes the first time figuring out how to set up a new device, sync it, and pull the logs. If you're used to pulling a single reading off a handheld and writing it down, the extra steps can feel cumbersome until you get into the rhythm. Battery life is decent for a logger that can run off the measured circuit, but the internal battery is primarily a backup. When you're running long-term monitoring on a circuit that you can't tap for power, say, a remote subpanel in a warehouse, you'll need to keep an eye on the battery indicator. In practice, I've seen the unit last close to 8 hours on a fresh charge under continuous logging, which is plenty for most shift-based tests, but not enough for multi-day monitoring without swapping batteries or using the external power option. So who should walk away with this meter? If you are an industrial electrician, a facilities engineer, or a maintenance contractor who regularly troubleshoots three-phase equipment, the Fluke 1732/B gives you a consolidated view of electrical health that would otherwise require multiple instruments and manual note-taking. It shines when you need to document trends, prove a problem to a client, or compare performance before and after.